simplified, you have to simplify it. So over here, what is 7 minus 3?
4.
X plus 4. We just went through that whole section on simplifying. X plus 4, right? These are like terms. Equals 32. So you have to make sure it's simplified. You have to get it to look like a one-step equation. And then you divide or subtract 4 means, I was thinking ahead here, X is 20. You should put that in and check it.
So I have a question. If this doesn't go left and right, why would the 1x plus 7 be 8 minus 3?
What is 1x plus 7?
Okay, I know.
You just went through that.
I got it. I know it.
I know. And that's easy to do. When I start mixing it all up like this, that's very easy to do, so you gotta watch yourself. Okay. Alright, so now it turns into a one-step equation. By the way, this is the first start, and this is like algebra that you have in algebra 1. I forgot what I was going to say. That's not been very good. Yes, I did. That blew everything right out of my mind. Alright. Two-step equations. Two-step equations are where there are two operations done to the variable. Alright, so I go to the steps in solving equations and I say, do I simplify each expression first? Alright, so here is the one expression, 2x plus 1. Is it simplified? Is there anything to add or subtract or multiply that I can do? No. And obviously this one is simplified, right? Because it's a constant. Alright, so it says find the variable term that still doesn't change. Step 2, find the variable term. It's right there. 2x. Alright, so now what is being done to it? Let's figure out what is being done. Okay, I'm multiplying it by 2. Is that all I'm doing is just multiplying by 2? What else am I doing? Oh, I'm also adding 1. So I'm multiplying by 2 and adding 1. I have to undo that. Alright, now, do I divide by 2 and subtract 1? Or do I subtract 1 and divide by 2? Here's a star. Remember I put a star up there? I'm going to put a little statement there. The variable term must be isolated. In other words, I'm trying to get down to x equals. The variable must be isolated. It must be by itself. The variable term must be by itself. Okay? Now that doesn't help me a whole lot other than the fact that what is the variable term? What did I say the variable term was? 2x. Is it by itself? Is the variable term 2x by itself? Then you must get it by itself first. So the 2x must be by itself first. Which means that I got to what? I have to get rid of this.
I thought that was already by itself. 2x is a term, plus 1's a term.
It is.
And then
The term is All right, this is the expression I have here.
Right.
Okay? This is a term plus a term. This is the variable term. What kind of a term is this? A number is a constant term. We went through that on Wednesday before we left, which is minimal.
Yeah.
The variable term must be by itself on one side, with no other terms added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided. How's that? You cannot, this term has to be by itself on this side of the equal sign. It can't have anything else with it. It can't have a constant term with it. You can't have another term here with it. That's what I'm trying to say. The variable term, the 2x, must be by itself.
So you take away 1.
Right. So you've got to get the variable term by itself first. So to do that, I am going to get rid of the plus 1. Now whatever I do to one side, I got to do to the other. Now what does that leave me on this side? That leaves me 2x on this side equals this. Now that problem, notice that we went from a 2-step to a 1-step. So we did 1 step, we subtracted 1, and now to find my answer, I'm going to divide by 2, and I'm going to get x equals 3. Right? So, the 2-step equation goes to a 1-step equation, which is solvable. And that's what I was going to say. In all of algebra, that's what you're eventually going to do. Is you're going to take everything that we have somehow back to 1-step equations. As you get into, and most of you remember in algebra, you had to factor. Factoring, we went to an x squared equation to an x and an x. You're taking it back to an x to the first equation. And we want to take it back to a 1-step equation. Now, the other way of thinking about that is you get lost. This is what I've done to the x, right? I multiplied by 2 and I added 1. You want to undo that. Okay? Remember the order of operations? The order of operations is how you do things. That's how you would do things. How would you undo things? If that's how you would do them, undo them, you want to work what? Backwards. So if I want to undo things, I'm going to do it backwards. So I'm going to undo addition and subtraction first, if that helps you. Either way, this is going to be by itself, because you're going to undo the plus 1 first. Okay? To undo plus 1, you have to subtract. And it doesn't matter, we'll do some more up here. Minus 3x minus 3 equals negative 10. What am I going to get rid of first? You're going to get rid of the minus 3. How am I going to get rid of the minus 3 right there? Now, notice I'm not adding 3 over here. Where am I adding 3? I'm adding it under the minus 3. Now, whatever I do to that side, I do to that side. What does that leave me? This cancels. That's negative 3x equals. Okay, now how do I solve that?
Divide it.
Divide by negative 3. Divide by negative 3. That's 1, which is x. Negative 7 divided by negative 3. Negative divided by a negative is a positive 2 1/3 or positive 2.3 repeating, right? If you're doing your calculus here. What am I going to get rid of first? The 7 plus 7. How am I going to get rid of it? Subtract the 7. Remember, just keep the variable term by itself. That's called isolating the variable. So that leaves me x over 2 plus 7 minus 7 is gone. What is 3 minus 7? Alright, now what do I do to solve that? Multiply by 2. Now I'm just going to do that and cancel that. And your answer is -8. That is a two-step equation. What do I do with a two-step equation? I get rid of the add or subtract and take it back to a one-step equation. Alright, we're going to make it a little more interesting, you know. What's the very first step we do, no matter what kind of an equation we have?
Parentheses.
We simplify, right? So you would have to do parentheses. What is x minus 7? We'll make it clear. Can you do x minus 7? We just went through that, right? Okay, so now what do? I have to distribute. That's a times. So that's 3x minus 21 equals 15 plus 8, which is 23. So now I simplify first. I'm subtracting 21. Get this by itself always, so you add 21. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. I'm always doing that. I'm always bringing my equal sign down. You have 3x equals 44, and then you solve that like you would a one-step equation.
So do you always do it to the opposite side of the equal sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember to get that variable term by itself. Isolate means get it by itself. So then you divide by 3, and you get whatever that is. 0.66 is 2/3. As long as you do what? If that's 14.66 repeating, what should you do at the time? That tells me that that's 2/3. Okay? So now they're getting just a little more complicated, aren't they? Most of you remember this stuff probably before you remember how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Because it's been more recent that most of you have done this. Right? Most of you have done it in high school. Which has been more recent than 5th grade when we're adding and subtracting fractions. Unless you've done it on a daily basis. Alright. Now I can get rid of this. And we go to the final types of equations, which they call multi-step. Which means that there's lots of things to do. Actually, there's only one more thing to do. And remember I had this little star here? I'm going to put a B underneath that, in case. The variable term must be isolated. Okay? This is in case. What happens if it's in both sides? Okay. If it's in both sides, in order to isolate or get it by itself, and this is where people will start getting confused. This is if the variable term, again, this has to do with variable terms. If it's in both sides, in order to isolate it, you're going to have to get rid of it on one side. Literally what I'm telling you is, if I have 3x minus 1 equals 7x plus 2, you can't say x equals x equals. You have to get rid of it on one side.
So minus 3x.
Okay, that's one way of doing it. So in other words, if I have plus 3x, to get rid of 3x now, I have to minus 3x. Notice I'm not minusing 3. What am I doing? I'm minusing 3x. Get a picture in your mind. Remember that the x's were like this. There was 3 of them on that side, but there's 7 of them on this side. I have to get rid of them on one side. I've got to take 3 off. Now, you can't do one side without doing. So if I'm going to subtract 3x there, I'm going to subtract 3x there. Okay, now what does that leave me? Negative 1 equals 4x. Okay, so I've taken a multi-step equation, and now what do I have? I have a two-step equation.
Aren't you going to add 1 now?
And now what do I do? Now,
Yeah.
locate what?
The other
Where's my variable at? It's on the right side now, isn't it? So I have to get rid of the 2. So I'm going to subtract 2. Negative 3 equals 4x. So I went from a multi-step to a two-step to a, and that's what you do in all the algebra.
Did you have to solve?
Well, now I have to solve that. I have to. And what is that? Here you go.
How come you didn't drop that 3? You just dropped the x. You're taking 3x from 3x. Wouldn't that
And
be
what is
no
3x from 3x?
Nothing.
0x. But what is 0 times x? 0.
So why is there a 3 still there?
This x, there's not a 3.
It says 3 or negative 3 equals 4x at the bottom. Why didn't you put that?
Oh, because you
Oh, because you already did that. Okay. I don't know what I'm saying.
I got to here, okay, when I subtracted the 3x. Then it just so happened that I had to subtract 2 and it became negative 3.
Okay.
Here, you want to, we'll make this a
No,
little
I got it.
different.
Thank
How's
you.
that? We'll make it minus 7 so it's minus 8. You understand what's happening? Okay. So, in all of algebra, that's what you do. That's what we're going to strive to do. When we have an x squared equation down the road, you guys take 90. We're going to say that that's an x times an x. We're going to create 2 factors with just x in them. So that will take us to this image. That's in essence what you eventually do.
So what do you defeat x? Because you said x equals 1.
Well, you've got something more like this. How do we solve that equation? And again, we're going to break it down into, and you have to understand back end. So you'll get that in mind. Unless you remember how to do that. But that's what I'm trying to say is, things are constantly being broken down into stuff that we've already done. Now, there's only one problem with this multi-step stuff. Well, let's do this. what is our first step in solving equations? Simplify, right? Okay, is this simplify?
Parentheses, no.
So what do we have to do with it?
Well, the
I'm just
parentheses.
like x minus 7 because a lot.
So 3 times 7.
So it's 3x minus 21 minus 2x. Is that simplified yet?
No.
So can I simplify